This is, I believe, what is the world's smallest OLED gaming monitor. It is the ASUS ROG Strix OLED XG259QWPG Ace. That's a mouthful. And it has a 24.5-inch tandem WOLED panel from LG Display. It has a full HD resolution of 1920 x 1080. And crucially, you can see the beautiful glossy black finish in front of the monitor as well, because this imparts increased perceived depth and contrast to the picture and increase the clarity that you actually get from watching the screen instead of a matte screen. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that this monitor is targeted towards esports players who prefer a smaller screen for the better field of view. And so the refresh rate is a staggering 540 Hz. And because of OLED's instantaneous response time of 0.02 milliseconds, you get supreme motion clarity that cannot be matched by any LED LCD monitor, even at the same refresh rate. Now, also, ASUS has implemented their own version of black frame insertion called ELMB, or extremely low motion blur feature, on this monitor. What this means is that you can run your source at 270 Hz, engage ELMB, and achieve motion clarity that is very similar to 540 Hz. And that is ASUS' own scalar-based solution. Now, in terms of the panel itself, obviously it is using a WOLED panel, the tandem one, which has a RGB subpixel structure, which means that it has improved text clarity compared to previous WOLED panel. But also, it is going to be brighter as well, because this is certified as VESA Display HDR True Black 600. And according to ASUS, it can reach an HDR peak brightness of 1700 nits on a 1.5% window and 390 nits full field at native white point. So maybe at D65, all these numbers will be lower. But still, Display HDR True Black 600 is not easy to achieve for an OLED monitor, and I'm really impressed that they've managed to achieve this on a 24.5-inch monitor, no less, albeit at 1080p resolution. Now, the other thing that I need to point out is that because this is targeted towards esports player, they have actually implemented a quick menu on screen that allows you to quickly toggle between different presets that you have actually configured, so that you can actually switch to it depending on your game or your use case without actually having to go into the user menu and do various things. But it also has a gallium nitride power solution, which will lower the heat accumulation behind the monitor, so you don't need a fan. I can keep the monitor cool and the peak brightness high. But ASUS actually has a better demonstration of this function in another station. So let's walk there and talk about another monitor. So this monitor here, if I can actually get past all this wild crowd. So this monitor is the bigger brother to the PG27UCWM that we saw at CES. Basically, it's a 32-inch 4K OLED monitor with RGB striped subpixel layout, which means that it doesn't use a white subpixel. And it has a native refresh rate of 240 Hz. But you can also engage dual mode and reduce the resolution to full HD, but increase the refresh rate to 480 Hz. And again, I really love this true black glossy coating in the front, which increases the perceived clarity and sharpness and the depth of the image. It doesn't use white subpixel, and therefore it will require more power to achieve the same brightness, because it can't rely on white subpixel boost. And therefore, ASUS has designed a gallium nitride based cooling solution, and they have actually shown the concept here. So here you can see that there's a cutout without the gallium nitride, and this is the cutout with the gallium nitride implemented inside to achieve some sort of cooling. And if I actually touch it here, I feel hotter, whereas if I touch it here, I feel a bit cooler. And you can actually see the difference in the temperature on these meters as well. So this is going to be implemented on not only this monitor, but also the aforementioned 24.5-inch. Now, let's come back to this tandem RGB stripe OLED. It is not going to be using a white subpixel, so the text clarity should be clearer. And in terms of connections, it has DisplayPort 2.1a with USB R20, which means that it is capable capable of reaching 80 gigabits per second bandwidth. And because of the lack of the white subpixel, the color volume is increased as well by up to 27% on this PG32U-CWM. But because this is ASUS 20th anniversary birthday, I want to sing a happy birthday song, but it's too loud in here. So I would like to walk to another area where ASUS has certain products, special products. Wow, so at least it's much quieter here and less crowded. But this is their 20th anniversary celebration edition of the ROG Swift OLED PG27AQWP that we first covered at Gamescom in Cologne last year. If you remember, I call it the most beautiful, gorgeous OLED that I've ever seen in terms of the design, because at the back, you have a transparent case that gives you an inkling about what's happening inside. And you can see the same back here. But crucially, obviously, this model number has been changed to a G suffix at the end to signify gold. And there are several gold accents, but crucially also, this particular logo here is using real gold, I've been told. And I tried to find out the amount of grams that they used, but they wouldn't tell me because, I think I would be quite tempted to maybe pack this in my suitcase or whatever on my flight back to Manchester. But you can see it's just really beautiful. Glossy front finish, with a really fast refresh rate of 540 Hz at QHD resolution, or at 720p resolution, you can even bump it up to 720 Hz. It's a 26.5-inch screen. Maybe you can see from the shot that there are two versions here. One is designated G and the other one is GR. Basically, the G edition will come with feet, whereas the GR edition will come with a monitor arm. But I also need to talk about a monitor or two that is not actually present here, so you may have to watch me talking about them in another clip because those monitors are found in another location. As you can see, I'm in a totally different location with a totally different outfit because we are filming the next day when Computex opens at the exhibition center. This is another new OLED monitor that ASUS has brought out for Computex. This is the ROG Strix OLED HG34WCDMS. This is actually using the newer QD OLED panel with pure RGB stripe subpixel structure. Now, if you remember from CES, they have already launched the PG34WCDM, but this is a slightly more affordable model with a lower specification because the refresh rate has dropped to 280 Hz from the 360 Hz on the higher end model, and also this has DisplayPort 1.4 with a DSC instead of DisplayPort 2.1. This, however, will still get the black shield film in front to give you that increased perceived blacks and also increased scratch resistance compared to previous QD OLED monitors. This will have the updated new proximity sensor, which will also be available on the OLED monitor I covered earlier. Now, let's talk about the other one, which is an LCD, but it is quite interesting because it is a 27-inch 5K LCD monitor from ASUS, launched at Computex as well. It has a true 5K resolution of 5120 x 2880, but at this resolution you can only run it at a slightly lower refresh rate of 80 Hz. But this is probably meant for productivity purposes in such a compact form factor. But out of all these monitors launched at Computex by ASUS, by far the most interesting one to me is the 24.5-inch OLED gaming monitor with 540 Hz refresh rate targeted towards esports gamers. And I hope to get my hands on a sample pretty soon. And when it's ready, you can watch my full technical review by clicking here.